On the next episode of Painting and Travel, Sarah visits the Tiger Encounter and Rehabilitation Sanctuary in Mims, Florida, and talks with the owner about care and rescue of large cats. In his studio, Roger uses acrylics to paint a portrait of a baby tiger.
I'm in Mims, Florida with Sharon LeClaire, and she used to have horses, but now she has large cats. And she hasn't purchased them because she wants to have them as pets. She's taken them in because other people have wanted to euthanize them, or it was just too inconvenient for them to continue caring for them. So this is her cat rescue, and she has a tiger here right now. And I can see he's very energetic.
He is. He's a baby Bengal. His name is Ralph. He's a good boy. He will be 3 months old on the 2nd of next month. And he's very energetic right now because he's been in his pool and he's really wanting to tear me up.
So if someone says, oh, that's such a wonderful looking animal, I'd love to have one for a pet, what would you say to them?
I would say, no, they are not pets. You don't want one for a pet because people that get them for pets, we will end up with them when they turn out like this and get about 95 pounds. If you don't handle them, they will handle you. No, they don't make a good pet.
I admire your big heart and your physical strength because this is a labor of love.
I just don't want them dead. I know that sounds like my heart is no, don't kill them. So.
You don't want them bred for pets, and you don't want someone to euthanize one once one has already come into the world.
Right.
Well, I think we may have seen enough of him for a while.
You think?
So for those of you thinking about getting one as a pet,
don't get one.
Just come and visit a sanctuary that cares for them.
Yeah.
This is our little dog, Mickey. I thought he was energetic, but nothing side of this Bengal tiger. So Mickey's gonna keep me company today. Here's the reference photo I'm going to use, and I simply freeze framed it from the video. This is an 11 by 14 inch piece of masonite covered with gesso. I've made the drawing on here, and I generally try and use standard sizes when I do my small paintings, 11 by 14, 9 by 12, 8 by 10, and so on. That way it's much easier to get them framed. You can get ready-made frames. Right down here on my palette I have titanium white, ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, cadmium red, and that's probably for areas around the nose and the ears. Then I have some earth colors here, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, burnt umber, and I have some chromium oxide green, and that's just for these areas of grass. To start with, I'm going to just take what I think is probably an overall color for the face of the tiger. And I'm not going to use any white yet. And I'm just going to tone this entire board, or most of the board, with this color. That will give me a base coat from which to work. I'm putting this on rather thin, and these are acrylics, so they'll dry real fast. I just scumble that on every which way. And then since I don't want all these strokes in here yet, once I get this on here, then with a light touch of my brush, I can just go over that, kind of flatten it out so I don't see all those brush strokes. I don't want all those brush strokes showing up quite yet. I'm taking some of my chromium oxide green, a little bit of burnt umber, and I'll just sort of do the same down here. Now, the chromium oxide green is very opaque. Now I can have some brush strokes and texture down in this area because it's grass, but I want the brush strokes to sort of follow the patterns of the grass, so I'll have those brush strokes go vertically. Now that I have those two colors placed in there, I'm going to let that dry for just a couple of minutes, then I can work into it some more. This is dry, and it really only did take about a minute or so. The paint really does dry fast on these masonite boards, much faster than it does on canvas, and of course it is quite thin. All right, now let's start working on our values. We got some major tones on here. We got sort of a light middle tone orange color, and now we need to start to put in the darks and the lights and work on both sides of this tone here. I think I'll start by putting in some of the darker tones. One important thing I always have right by my side when I'm using acrylics is this spray bottle. This not only keeps my acrylic paints wet, but I can moisten the board here, and it helps this paint flow over the dry paint quite easily. It just makes it so it doesn't drag. Now here's where I want to start using some of that texture with my brush. So I'm careful right now to make these brush strokes in the same direction that the fur is going. In other words, I don't want the fur coming up this way, the fur is leaning this way. So I have all my brush strokes coming out in this direction. Now this is a much easier and, in my opinion, a much more practical and effective way to make fur rather than getting a tiny, tiny brush and trying to paint every little piece of fur that's on the animal. Some people like to do that, and that's fine, but this is my preference, to do it as quickly and as efficiently as I can. And I think in some ways it does make the painting a little more effective than trying to paint every single little brush stroke of fur. All right, here we just have some background areas that sort of nondescript. And then I'll smooth that out. I don't want a lot of texture in there because that'll fight with the texture in the animal. So I want to keep that kind of flat. Burnt sienna, yellow ochre, basically using these three earth colors here for the color of the animal. And right over here we have a little more hint of color. So I'm just building this up in layers, just a little bit at a time. Not being too aggressive with it, just kind of taking it carefully. And when I start out painting like this, I generally start by using thinner paint, and I use thicker paint as I go along. It's important for me to cover the whole board or the whole canvas, whichever I'm working on. I don't want to leave a lot of white space on a board like this, because that white space will affect my thinking as what these other colors and values are ultimately. So I want to get everything covered. I'm going to pick up some white now and a little cerulean blue and start blocking in a few of these lighter areas. And you see, I'm not trying to be real fussy with my brush strokes yet, just blocking this in. Keeping it very simple at this stage. And that way, if I really make a mistake and I realize it, I won't have spent a lot of time on the detail. The most important thing for me, anyway, is just to get some of these values and big shapes in place. A lot of people don't like the acrylics because they dry so fast. And see, I just put that on really in real time, just a few minutes ago, a few seconds ago. And I can feel it's a little bit tacky, but it's almost dry. And that can be a real advantage and it can be a real disadvantage. Just kind of depends on what you get used to. But if you like acrylics and just can't seem to get along with them, be a little bit persistent, give them a try, and it doesn't take too long before you sort of get the hang of it. And it becomes easier, it's like anything. Now I'm mixing cerulean blue with this white just because I want some difference in the warm colors and the cool colors here. If I didn't put that cerulean blue in there, I guess it would be all right, but this way it gives another color in there to the painting instead of having all warm colors. Gives a little variation. Ultramarine blue and burnt umber. Now I could have put some black on my palette here. I just didn't. I didn't think I really needed it. I thought I could make a nice color that still has some color in it by mixing my burnt umber and my ultramarine blue. The eyes are so important when painting animals or people. And one way to make an animal like this a little more endearing is to make the eyes slightly larger than they are in real life. Yeah, I'm just using the side of my brush here. By using the side of the brush, it helps to keep my brush strokes a little bit looser than they would otherwise. And I can also spray my board frequently. And when I do that, and then I put on some brush strokes, some paint like this, since the board is slightly wet, the brush strokes will tend to flare out somewhat and become a little bit softer because of that wet board. I'm just letting the brush do most of the work here. Just holding it very loose and just letting it sort of jump around kind of by itself, and that way I won't get real tight brush strokes. Let's put the eyes in. These eyes tend to be kind of a yellow-green. Beautiful color. I'm not sure this is quite the right color, but the only way to do this is just, mix on your palette and give it a try. Sometimes I can hit it right on the mark with these colors and the values. Other times it takes a few tries. There's no real recipe for this. Each painting is different, and each painting comes with its own set of problems and solutions. I think that's about the right local color. So from there, when that dries for a few minutes, I can go in and put some highlights in here and a few darker areas underneath the eye. It's good for now.
Sharon, here in your guest quarters in your hotel, what other cats do you have?
We're actually on this facility right now. We have 2 Siberians, and they were going to be euthanized an hour after birth. Okay.
They were going to euthanize this beautiful cat?
Yes, the Siberian cats, because they could have no more animals on their compound. This happens more often than people know.
Now, when you received the tiny cats,
right?
How did you raise them? Did you have to bottle feed them?
We had to bottle feed them. I had to make their formula every hour and 10 minutes, 24/7. For the first 3 weeks of their life until they got onto ground turkey and ground chicken.
Well, did you just spend the whole night in an easy chair and just kind of sleep for
Oh yeah, every time they got up, you had to make their formula brand new, which worked out fine. Our handler was very good with us. We had to learn a lot of handling hours to get your handler's license, and then a USDA license, and then a Florida Fish and Wildlife license. So, yeah, and this is how big they are now. When we got them, I think they weighed in at, one was 5 pounds, one was 8 pounds. Now they're weighing in at 450 and almost 500 pounds.
And that's why they have an enormous cage to live in now instead of your bedroom.
Yes. They are a wild animal. I have a great respect for them. I don't go in and I go, come on, baby, and play, okay? We don't do the play thing. That they have bowling balls to play with that they can't ruin. The tubes, as you see, they absolutely love. They get on top of those, they roll those, they get in it, they have a good time.
You're really their keeper then. You're not their playmate.
No.
You look after their nutrition, their health needs.
Right.
I must say they look very healthy.
Thank you. These guys, Mama and Daddy, were actually rescued from another hunt out in Texas, where they still hunt these cats at $50,000 and $60,000 a piece, where the big bad hunters can say, look what I did. In a fenced area, and that's like fishing in a barrel. I mean, that's what they do. And they come home and say, look what I did, to put their fur on a wall or their head on the wall. No, that's not happening to these guys.
The best way to have a head of an animal on your wall is a painting. Make your own painting.
I got you.
Come and visit and set up your easel and do
a
portrait. I was wondering, I heard that you have a lion here.
Oh yeah, I have a lion here. Yeah, a baby lion. Would you like to see him?
A baby lion? Yes, I'd like to see your baby lion.
He's a baby one. Well, he's baby. He's only 2, so he's not grown up yet, but you will see him.
Okay, I'd like to, yes. Is this the baby lion?
This is the baby lion. This is Mr. Cody. Right now he is at 2 years and 3 months old. He has another 9 months to go before he turns into a full-grown lion. And when he has his full roar, you should be able to hear it at about 5 miles.
Look at him up close. Isn't he amazing?
He'll probably weigh about 450, 500 pounds, maybe a little bit more.
Well, in order to keep him happy, you've got this nice big cage. He's got several toys to play with. He has some shelter. And he seems to like visitors.
He loves visitors. He thinks he's like king of the jungle. He gets a rack of ribs every day too, so he does very well.
And how much more weight do you say he's going to gain?
He will be in about another 450, 550. He'll get that much by the time he's full grown.
So from here he's going to go another 150 pounds?
Yeah, probably.
What do you think is the most important thing for people to know about caring for these large cats?
To know about them, you can never treat them as though they're just like a domesticated animal, because that's the most important thing. I mean, you cannot treat them that way. We treat them, I mean, we treat them good, don't get me wrong, but, you know, like you say, you don't play with them. They're not play toys. They're not, you know, they're not something that you just say, hey, baby, how's it going? I would love to go in because of raising them by hand and having them when they were that little. I would love to still go in and say, hi, and put my arms around them, but that's where people make the mistake.
Well, I've really enjoyed seeing them up close. I think it's phenomenal that they're just so beautifully cared for by you, and that you do this just because you don't want to see them put down.
No, I don't.
I think that's very admirable.
No, we definitely don't want to see them put down.
We have some pink up here in the ears and the nose. And I'll just mix that right in here with this burnt sienna. I can see that's much too light, so I'll need to tone that back. Maybe some blue in there. That's better. Let me touch more red. A little bit of brown. Really, you know, this is all about adjusting the colors all the time as I go. Because paintings like this, or really any painting, I can't boil it down to a formula. Each painting is unique. I don't want any kind of a formula while I'm working. That way, if I did that, all my paintings would sort of be the same, be alike, and I would never really grow very much. So I don't want to find one particular way of working and then just stay with it forever, because then all my paintings would just sort of be the same, and I just wouldn't get the pleasure out of it that I do when I work like this and try and resolve each problem on each painting. Okay, we got that nose right there. Touch more red. There. That's starting to come to life a little bit. Some more white, touch of cerulean blue. And I want to really start to bring these colors and these values up. Really what I'm doing here is I'm starting to work on the accents. I've got all the basics down. Now we'll just start to refine all these areas. Really this is going to give it some contrast. Right now everything is sort of middle tone, doesn't jump out very much. It's just not too exciting, but when I start to put in these more contrasting colors and values, hopefully this will come to life even more. Put a nice soft edge right up here on its paw. A light touch of the brush will keep that soft. Now you see this color that I put on at the very first, a lot of that is showing through. And had I not done that to begin with, this would have been a whole different process. It would have been a lot more difficult. But just to put a nice wash of that warm color on there to start with really helped me out to get a good start on this painting. And when I'm doing something like fur to the ears here, I'm holding my brush perpendicular to the painting, just so those ends of that bristles, hair on the brush, will just drag in like that. If I did it on the side, that wouldn't work. Now there's other areas, of course, where I need to do it on the side. So it kind of depends on what area I'm working on, what kind of brush strokes need to be put on there. You know, brushstrokes are really such an important part of any painting. It's really the artist's signature. Often you can tell who did a particular painting just by the brushstrokes. So I never neglect the idea that my brushstrokes are really the personality that's going into the painting. I'm picking up a smaller brush now and I'm going to work on these eyes more. I want to refine them. It's really the most important part of the portrait. Mix up some ultramarine blue and brown again. I think I'll give that a little mist. And I'm just going to refine these areas. Just want to put these kind of into sharp focus. Okay, now the pupil of his eye. It's real bright out, so that pupil is very small. Kind of gives him that stare, doesn't it? More yellow ochre. Touch of white. And I'm going to give this eye more form. This part of the eye is in shadow, so I'll make that darker by adding some cerulean blue there. And with some white and this yellow ochre, let's put in that highlight. Right there, just with a touch. All right, I'm going to go back to a larger brush again and mix up some ultramarine blue and brown, touch of chromium oxide green, and I want to get this area down here darker. Didn't quite get as dark as it needed to be. So I do want light patches of grass in here, but the underside of the grass, or the part of the grass that's not getting much light, and the dirt and the earth there, that will be darker. And then as soon as this sets up, we'll put some lighter greens over that to indicate the blades of grass. I keep working all these areas a little bit at a time, a little bit here, a little bit there, and so on. Being careful not to finish any one area too soon. I want this whole painting to be finished at the same time. So I don't want to really finish any one particular area totally. I want this to be complete all sort of all at once, you know. And I'm going to put a touch of that warm color here and there on the nose and on some of the fur here. More like the color of this ear. Even though I don't see it on the photograph that much, I want to add a little bit of that warmth. I'll just start to put in some more paint up in these areas. It's pretty thin right now, and I want it to look substantial enough where it feels like it has some paint to it. I'm using thicker paint now to build this up, because I don't want all this paint to be so thin. If everything were really, really thin on here, the painting would look like it just didn't have any commitment to it. I'll give that a little shot of water. And that water just makes that paint flow out over the dry paint easy. Pick up some dark paint here, and let's put in the areas of the paw. Mixing up some lighter green, and just with a flip of the brush, and I hold the brush very loose when I do this, I'll put in those blades of grass. I don't want to fuss over these very much. I'm just going to let the brush do its work. I'll vary the colors by adding some blue, some green, different colors here, just so all the blades of grass aren't quite the same. Maybe add a touch of red. And we'll just flip that grass right up over the leg there. Now I could put in a lot more detail in this grass, but I don't really think it's necessary. I'm just going to leave it loose like this. It gives it, in my opinion, a little more painterly feel than if I were to just go in and refine every single piece of grass. Keep that nice and soft, like it were sort of in the distance. And maybe one or two blades of grass that are more refined. So I'll lighten that and just 1 or 2 blades right in here. And I think that's all I need for the grass. I'm going to put 2 more colors out on my palette. Phthalo green. Don't need much, just a little bit. And some cadmium yellow. Cadmium yellow light. And on these eyes, just take some phthalo green and just a thin wash of phthalo green on those eyes. Then with my cadmium yellow, just add a thin wash of yellow on there. I'll wipe my brush off so I have a dry brush and I can just smooth that, blend those together. With cadmium red and white, I'm adding more color to the ears. Touch of pure white on a small brush. And I'll go over those highlights one more time. Well, now it's time to put those whiskers on, and instead of using a small pointed brush, I'm using a bright, but it has a nice chisel edge on it, and really that will hold more paint than a small pointed brush. I'm just going to use that on its side and just bring these right down. Now the paint is fairly thin on here, and that way it flows off the tip of the brush easily. And without hesitation, I just drag those out and down. Well, I think that will finish this painting of Ralph, the 3-month-old Bengal tiger.
For more information about painting and travel with Roger and Sarah Bansemer, visit paintingandtravel.com.